Well, Starfield is just behind the corner, dear viewer, and it made me realize I may never be able to try out some of my Skyrim character ideas, or at least not for a long time, which means today I am putting a few of the more interesting of those ideas in one neat video. If you're looking for something to play while waiting for Starfield, maybe you can use one of them. 4 out of 5 can be done in Vanilla Anniversary Edition, but I may occasionally mention some mods I think can make the character better or more polished. And if you like any of these 5, let me know in the comments. Maybe one day I will make a more detailed guide video for your favorites. Anyway, in no particular order, let's begin. First off, the Stoner. What? It's a working title, The build is about standing stones. It's a perfectly usable name for a Skyrim build.
Ain't nobody high in these halls, except in the Jarl. And don't you forget.
Ballin'. Anyway, the Stoner works on a neat little exploit that may require a separate guide if you've never done it before. Link in the description. Basically, if you beat the Lost to the Ages quest and craft yourself the Ethereal Crown, you can now use most, if not all, of the standing stone powers and abilities with one character. You have to activate them in the alphabetical order and equip or unequip the crown immediately after you confirm the stone's activation in the pop-up menu. Some stones combine really nicely with each other, having a once per day paralysis, once per day 60 seconds invisibility, and the overpowered mass zombification of the ritual stone can be quite useful. And this idea can be quite easily enhanced with a little mod called Summermyst Enchantments of Skyrim. As the name suggests, it adds new enchantments to the game, among them Power Surge. When placed on a weapon, Power Surge will yield a chance to trigger your currently selected greater power, such as your standing stone power. The power will fire, but its daily use will not be spent, meaning that as long as, for example, your Serpent Stone power is selected, you get a chance to paralyze enemies in front of you with each hit of your Power Surge weapon. You can hotkey all your powers and then switch between them as needed during combat, meaning your weapon attacks can now have different effects depending on what you need. For best effects, the character would probably need to perk their enchanting skill and alchemy skill so that you can make strong fortify enchanting potions and therefore make Power Surge stronger. Using Power Surge on a fast weapon, or better yet on 2 daggers with dual wielding perks, can also greatly improve your chances of triggering any one of your powers during combat. Right, next one, the Agent of Chaos. This is a multi-purpose hybrid build using a staff, a sword and a bow depending on circumstances, and each of these weapons would have some randomized effect. The main melee weapon with chaos damage effect that you can mostly find in Solstheim, which has a chance to deal damage from each of the main elements, fire, frost or lightning, separately. Best case scenario from all 3 at once. This enchantment can become really broken if you use it with high enchanting skill and 2 ranks in at least one of the augmented perks in Destruction. It's actually best to have all of them, augmented fire, augmented frost and augmented lightning. This will make your chaos damage effect almost 4 times stronger than standard. This can be augmented further by wearing one of the Solstheim Dragon Priest masks, but in the end I opted for wearing the Jester clothing and make myself look like a rather recognizable character from movies and comic books. Yeah. In your left hand you would carry the Wabbajack, a very random Daedric staff which also has a chance of dealing elemental damage, though just 1 at a time. So it will benefit from fortified destruction potions, but it can also paralyze its targets or change them into something harmless or do absolutely nothing. Not a very reliable weapon, but it's fun to use and at times amazingly useful. You could also add the Mehrunes Razor to your weapon set. It has a random chance of instantly killing its targets, and so it's sufficiently chaotic. Then, for the sake of variety in combat, you could also go with the Black Bow of Faith. This one has a separate chance for each of the absorb attribute effects to trigger on hit. So absorb stamina, absorb health, or absorb magicka. Best case scenario, all 3 at once. weapons. So archery, sneak, alchemy, one-handed and destruction would need to be perked. Now for a really simple but still really satisfying one, the Hailstorm Mage. A mage possible in the Anniversary Edition or with a nearly game-breaking piece of Creation Club content. A build that is almost complete after a single dungeon run, not even a full run. In Hopsfall Cave, yes, in Anniversary Edition you will find a chest filled to the brim with perfectly balanced spells. We are mainly after two of them, Unbounded Freezing and Unbounded Storms. Unbounded Freezing is a concentration spell that creates a frost cloak around you as long as you keep it up, and it stacks with your currently active cloak spell. And it can freeze approaching enemies solid, essentially paralyzing them for a second. You can use it in short bursts to save some magicka as well as to never allow the melee attackers to stand up. Meanwhile, Unbounded Storms is a concentration lightning cloak that also sparks little lightning strikes around you. So the best approach is to have the freezing in one hand and the storms in the other. You deal a crap ton of damage in close proximity, but at a slightly greater distance you can deal damage with those lightning strikes, and enemies who are insane enough to attack you in melee are repeatedly paralyzed. The spells are both expert level spells, match balanced, thank you.
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
So before you have enough magicka to use them reliably, you may use the elemental line of spells, such as Elemental Burst, also found in that terrifying chest in that dinky cave. These are weird spells for all levels of Destruction Mastery. They basically combine benefits of all three elements, so they also benefit from most elemental perks in Destruction. They benefit from Augmented Flames, getting a damage boost from that, despite actually dealing sheer magic damage, not fire damage, so they are not affected by fire resistance of your enemies. They can cause panic in your enemies with Intense Flames Aspect of Terror combo. They also have the burning after effect they share with normal fire spells, while also having a chance to paralyze enemies if the Deep Freeze perk is unlocked, but also they deal extra damage with the Disintegrate perk. Indeed, the Elemental Flare must be the most cost-effective spell in the game, so if you ever get bored with your late-game combo of the two Unbounded spells, you can always switch back to your early-game elemental spells and start blasting. I would probably go with heavy armor so I can wear Zakrisos's mask with full benefits, as well as grab some perks in alchemy for some OP fortified destruction potions. Such a build would work particularly well with the Vokrii perk overhaul. It has some really enjoyable heavy armor perks and destruction perks, and generally a lot of enjoyable perks, or you could just use Aziraph's armor for the chance of paralyzing melee attackers, or both Vokrii and Aziraph's armor. For the extra sense of pride and accomplishment, I would also use some conjuration to conjure some elemental Atronachs. I don't think you would experience much danger with such character, but your power fantasy would be fulfilled for a bit, so go play this one when you feel a little bit depressed. Now for the Dread Emperor. Technically, I have played a Jedi Knight inspired character, and my Saruman build from long time ago was also a little bit reminiscent of Emperor Palpatine with the ever so deadly Paralysis Wall of Storms combo. However, such character concepts are much more powerful in Anniversary Edition, again thanks to that perfectly balanced chest of spell tomes in Hopsfall Cave. With those in our possession, the build could use the Paralysis rune, which is simply and by all accounts better than the standard Paralysis, as it affects more enemies at the cost of much less magicka. So in your left hand you will often switch between Paralysis rune and Wall of Storms, or better yet, Paralysis rune and Unbounded Storms, to just damage everything around you. This would make your sword almost redundant, but we have to keep up the appearances of a Sith, so let's use a bound sword in our right hand, one of the best weapons in the game for non-crafting characters. I can bet you 100 septims this character would be insanely powerful too, especially if you remember to check a fortified destruction potion from time to time. The skills would be Alteration for the armor spells and resistances, one-handed for the sword, Destruction for lightning attacks, and possibly Alchemy for the fortified destruction potions, and of course Conjuration for bound swords. Also, wearing the Anniversary Edition Necromancer's robes could really complete the looks. They are quite Sith-like, and they do sometimes come without enchantments, so you can enchant them yourself with whatever you need. And finally, I have always wanted, but never got the chance to try making a properly, fully Fallout-y character in Skyrim. I would most likely use a few mods for that and just have fun, throwing away all the concerns for balance. I would use the Dwemer Exoskeleton mod in place of power armor. I would grab a mod for firearms, such as lore-friendly guns, and use the Ethereal Staff or the Tonal Architect mod to summon Dwemer robots. Tonal Architect also introduces a staff that works almost exactly like a fat man in Fallout games. It has similar sounds even, and is at least as powerful. I do have a few Dwemer builds like this, but nothing this insane and as perfectly balanced. It could be a real fun ride, not very challenging, but really nice for a shorter fun playthrough. Oh, and the skills would most likely involve heavy armor and destruction, as well as enchanting and smithing. And that is it for the video. Maybe you have some particularly wacky or obscure character ideas that you've never actually properly played with. Share them in the comments. Do it! At some point I will be making Skyrim builds again, I'm sure. Be it because Starfield turns out to be a dud, or because Elder Scrolls 6 is still a few years away. So, who knows? Maybe one day you will see your idea in your YouTube recommendations. Assuming, of course, you are subscribed and have enabled notifications. What a masterful segue! Well, yes, do like, share and subscribe. Consider a donation via Subscribestar or Super Thanks button down there. And most importantly, have fun. We will see each other again. Bye!